Hi, this is Mori. I'm an associate broker at Vista Sotheby's International Realty. And today we're talking with Wayne Craig about the Redondo Beach power plant. Wayne is a longtime agent here in the South Bay and is also an expert on everything you'd want to know about the electrical plant. Folks, you're in for an intriguing tale. But first, some background. Before the electrical plant began to be constructed in 1948, the saltwater lake was there at the time and had to be filled. The water still has to be constantly pumped out. In 1998, after several additions to the 50-acre plant, AES bought it. In 2010, the state voted to phase out ocean water cooling power plants, which this is, and the city approved the use of a park on the grounds. The plant is not efficient, it's antiquated, kills ocean life, and is not needed. In 2018, AES sold the plant to New Century Power, who pledged to build offices, housing, a hotel, and a park. And that's when it all started to fall apart. Okay, Wayne, so first question. Getting rid of polluting, ugly, fish-killing power plant to build a hotel, housing, offices, a park. Sounds great for the city. What happened?
Well, as the plant itself is really old, as you mentioned, 1950s technology. The state has actually outlawed, or wanted to outlaw the use of water cooling for these plants for a long time. And the problem has been, obviously, we've had some energy issues that have come up, which has allowed this plant to keep on running year after year. In fact, the California State Water Board is the agency that manages the use of this water for the utility. Now, they've been extending this because we've had some, as you know, power issues in the state of California.
Right.
Not as bad as what happened during Enron, but still bad nonetheless. But the problem is that this plant's so old, it's being used as what's called a peaker plant, which means that when we have a brownout coming up, these plants are supposed to spin up, generate power, and save the day, basically. Problem is, this is such an old plant, it takes a day or two to spin up to get going. It only runs annually about 2% of the time, which, if you think about it, we're like, well, how could that really save the day? And the other issue that people don't realize, as you know, your electric bill, if you probably saw your bills go up in the last 6 months, about $40 million plus a year, the state pays AES just to sit by on standby.
Wow.
So if you're wondering why your rates are high, that's part of the reason. Additionally, it's polluting. It's upwind of, I think, 6 different schools. And when it does fire up, if you've seen pictures of it, it can be sometimes pretty bad. So it's about the state board has finally realized that it's gone beyond its useful lifespan. It's too risky for the public, and it's time just to shut it down.
Okay, so what happened?
Well, they are supposed to be shut down at the end of the year. And so the current owner basically realizes that that $40 million a year he's getting is going to be gone. So trying to figure out some other use for it. Now the AES site, when it was sold to this individual, it's actually a bunch of LLCs, about 12 of them. The one that you mentioned is part of that.
Yeah.
And so as they did in a lot of real estate purchases, the AES financed the purchase. So recently it became known that they defaulted on a big payment they needed to make on their mortgage for this plant, essentially. So since they're in notice of default, the AES decided to start foreclosure action on it. Now, once that happened, the LLCs just figured out a way to it's a process to try to slow down again, I'm not an attorney, so I can't really speak on what they did, but they filed bankruptcy in order to stop this foreclosure action. Now, since that's happened, the AES is still pursuing the action in bankruptcy court, and the city of Redondo Beach has actually enjoined or added themselves to the lawsuit because if this land is foreclosed back to AES, the city actually could purchase it back from AES is what we intended to do in the first place.
Sounds like a big mess.
It is, as most things happen. We're on the coastline, high demand area. You got some big money.
Also, the word is that the plant will be closed by the end of the year.
Exactly. Currently, right now, the California Water Board, I forget the name right, I always get the agency's names mixed up, but it's supposed to be shut down at the end of the year.
Well, that's good news, I think. Okay. Is there a is there a plan for the power lines we've seen forever on 190th Street, which I assume they come from the plant?
Yeah, it's interesting. I didn't realize this till I did more research, but there's not one set of power lines, there's actually two. And you're wondering, well, why I only see one set of poles? No, there actually is one that's a little taller and then one's smaller. And the reason is one has a huge amount of energy that comes through, the other one has a slower amount.
Oh.
And so basically from the 405 where it connects, it's like a giant extension cord. So you actually have one cord that goes all the way to the plant and gets the energy, gets it fired up essentially, because it runs on gas now. So you've got to, the equipment needs to be run electrically to start it. And then once it generates power, the bigger power lines shoot the power out to the grid. So it's actually one giant extension cord. So Edison was contacted to do a study, I think 3 or 4 years ago. And the city asked, hey, if we took these, would you be willing to take these down? And they said, yeah. In fact, they would do it at no cost to the local municipality, Redondo or any other city it's in, because they can actually resell all the power line equipment to another, like they could put that big power pole up somewhere else.
So who owns that land?
It's currently Edison has a utility, easement on it right now. And underneath it, there's actually something else that a lot of people don't realize. There's a giant gas pipeline that runs underneath that. It's about one of those 12 or 15 foot diameter pipes, and that's where the gas comes to run the power plant.
Oh my goodness.
So a lot of people are saying, well, it'd be great, we could take down these poles and then build something on it. Problem is you can't build on top of a 12-foot diameter gas line. So what'll probably end up happening is a greenbelt, very similar to what's in Hermosa and Manhattan now from the old rail line.
Right.
Which would be great. We can have a connection from the ocean up almost to Torrance all the way.
Maybe a bike path also.
Bike path, a lot of different things can happen. So it's some really interesting opportunities.
Good, good. All right. So what are the present plans for the plant, and do you think they are reasonable? And if not, what should they be planning?
Well, people have to realize the land itself is zoned for parkland. And you might be scratching your head, well, how can it be parkland if there's a power plant on it? Well, it was originally zoned as a parkland, and then about 100 years ago, that's when the first power plants were being built on the site. And as you mentioned, there actually originally is about a 6-acre salt lake that actually is right on top where the power plant is now. So in order for the anything to happen on it, you'd have to change the zoning, because right now it's parkland with a conditional use permit for power generation. So that's all they can technically do right now.
Right.
The other big angle is that the Coastal Commission, California Coastal Commission, has jurisdiction over that area from where the tideland is to about I think it's about 1,000 feet inland, over anything that's built in the state of California. So in order for anything else to be done to it, you would have to get permission from the California Coastal Commission, and you'd have to have the property rezoned. And Redondo, we have a process where if you're going to be a major zoning change on property, it has to go to a vote to the whole population of Redondo, all the voters.
Right.
So that's another thing that would have to change. Now, the guy who bought the group that bought the power plant originally offered to sell a big chunk of the land to the city of Redondo, and the city was in the process of getting grants to pay for that from the state of California. Apparently, there's these huge funds that are just allocated for this purpose. I have to go through the numbers, but at least 10 to 15 million has already been earmarked for purchase of this land. So everything started out pretty good when the new buyer bought it. He wrote a letter of intent to the city saying, hey, I'm going to do this, which allowed us to get the grant funding, or get the process going anyway. And then he changed his mind. So what's going on now is they have backed off on that. He said he didn't mean what he said in a letter, which unfortunately is going on. And what he now wants to do is, again, try to upzone the property. And the current plans are for 2,700 units of apartments and condos, a hotel, a bunch of business stuff on it, all of which has to be approved by the Coastal Commission.
And the city.
And the city.
And the people.
Yeah, and so he's trying to get that in through to try to, I shouldn't say he, it's like I said, it's 12 LLCs that are running it. One person has kind of been the spokesperson for it, but essentially it's a big entity involved. So as this goes through, I mean, we don't really know where it's going to end up. I mean, some of the plans that have been floated the Coastal Commission already says you have to bring back this lake. 6 acres at least. And there has to be a buffer zone around it, so it might actually be a little bit more than that. People in the city have been proposing putting an aquatic center there. Maybe up toward PCH putting some type of
Hotel,
retail or hotel or something like that, which are important for this to generate money for the city, because people don't realize in local economies, while we get money from taxes to pay for things, for every dollar you collect on property tax, the city only gets about 16.5 cents or 17 cents back. So it's important to note that doesn't fund the whole city. Like in Redondo, we only get about $100 million budget. Only about 60 million of it comes from the main revenue sources. Other stuff comes from hotels. One of the biggest money makers for cities are actually car dealerships, believe it or not, because of sales tax and whatnot. So how it's going to turn out, it's hard to say.
Nobody knows.
As most things that happen in California, people go to the courts, and right now it's in bankruptcy court. If the AES gets the plant back, who knows? The city might be able to buy it. We don't know.
Oh boy, it sounds like it's a big fat mess, as it has been the past few years.
Right, and it's probably going to take some time to go through the process. But ultimately, like I said, it's an excellent opportunity for a lot of good to happen. And the main thing is, like I said, it hasn't been running for a long time. It's been a health hazard really for a long time. And as we talked about earlier, back in the day, I remember friends of mine who would wake up in the morning, they'd find soot on their car from the plant back in the 60s and 70s, when it used to burn a lot dirtier than it is now. So, some good opportunity. I guess the main thing is we'll just wait and see.
All right, thank you, Wayne. I appreciate it. I'm
Thank you.
sure we learned a lot more today. Bye, everybody. See you next time.